Welcome back to the channel. I want to share something with you today that has kept me up at night for weeks. This video explores one of the most overlooked mysteries in Fallout lore. What really happened to the pre-war space program? Everyone knows about the moon landings, the vaults, the bombs, but nobody asks the obvious question. If America successfully established lunar missions for decades before the Great War, where did those people go? Why did the signals stop? And most disturbing of all, what if they never actually stopped? This is a deep dive into evidence suggesting that the lunar colonies survived the apocalypse, that they have been watching Earth for 200 years, that they possess technology far beyond anything the wasteland has seen, and that they might be planning to return and reclaim the planet they once called home. The terminals tell a story nobody wanted us to piece together. The crashed satellites, the orbital weapon platforms, the mysterious supply drops, the strange figures appearing in the wasteland. It all points to one terrifying conclusion. We are being watched from above, and Phase 2 is coming. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if you like the content. I need to tell you something before they find me. Before the signal cuts out for good, my name does not matter anymore. What matters is what I discovered buried in these terminals, scattered across 3 different installations. And what matters even more is that someone knows the truth before it is too late. You think you know the wasteland. You think you understand what happened on October 23rd, 2077. The bombs fell, the world burned, civilization collapsed. That is the story everyone accepts. But what if I told you that the real story begins much earlier and extends far beyond this irradiated hell we call Earth? What if the greatest secret of the pre-war world was not what they built in underground vaults, but what they established 239,000 miles away on the lunar surface? I am recording this in what used to be a USSA monitoring station, the United States Space Administration. You probably saw their logo in that museum in DC, if you ever made it that far. They want you to believe it was all about exploration, about pushing the boundaries of human achievement, about pride and scientific discovery. They showed you the Virgo 2 lunar lander. They told you about Valiant 11 touching down in 1969. Brave astronauts, noble men, first steps on the moon, all very heroic, all very patriotic, all very much a lie. Not a complete lie. They did land on the moon. Captains Richard Wade, Mark Garris, and Michael Hagen, July 16th, 1969. That part is true. But what they do not tell you, what they carefully edited out of every public record, is that Valiant 11 was not an exploration mission. It was a reconnaissance operation. They were scouting locations for something much bigger, much more permanent, much more militarized. 4 months later, Valiant 12 went up. November 14th, 1969, another lunar landing, another flag planted, but this time, they left behind more than a flag. I found the manifest, buried deep in a sealed military terminal at the old Pentagon ruins. Valiant 12 delivered the first construction materials for what would eventually become Tranquility Station, modular habitat components, water extraction equipment, solar power arrays. This was not a flag planting ceremony. This was the beginning of colonization. And here is where it gets dark. Here is where my hands started shaking as I read terminal after terminal. The missions did not stop. Public knowledge claims the last manned flight to the moon happened in 2052. They brought back the Valiant 12 flag from the surface, made a big ceremony of it at the Museum of Technology. Closure. The end of an era. A final goodbye to humanity's lunar ambitions as resources shifted toward vault construction and the inevitable war with China. That is what they wanted you to believe. The truth is that lunar missions continued. They just stopped telling anyone about them. Between 2020 and 2052, the Delta IX rocket series flew 77 successful missions. 77. The terminal logs are still here, encrypted but not erased. Most delivered cargo, some delivered personnel, a few delivered weapons. By 2034, they were not even pretending anymore. They converted the crew sections of Delta IX rockets and replaced them with nuclear warheads, orbital deployment. The moon was not just a colony, it was a weapons platform. I found a name in the files, Stellar Dynamics. Ever heard of them? Neither had I. They were a subsidiary of Vault-Tec. Yes, that Vault-Tec, the same corporation that built underground prisons disguised as survival shelters. The same company that experimented on American citizens like lab rats. They had a space division, heavily funded, minimal oversight. Officially, their purpose was satellite communications and orbital logistics. Unofficially, they were constructing the infrastructure for permanent lunar habitation, and they were doing it alongside Robco, Poseidon Energy, West-Tec, and Repcon Aerospace. You recognize those names, the corporate giants that carved up America and sold it for parts. They all had a stake in the moon. Robco designed the AI systems for lunar base operations, autonomous construction robots, self-repairing HAB modules. Poseidon Energy developed Helios Project, solar power collection on an industrial scale, not for Earth, for the colony. West-Tec provided the real nightmare fuel. They were testing FEV in zero-gravity environments, forced evolutionary virus, the same compound that created super mutants. They wanted to see how it performed off-world. Think about that. Think about what they were planning. The Boulder Dome was not just a research facility. The files explicitly state it was a prototype for lunar settlements. They built it to withstand nuclear attack because they needed to perfect closed-system habitation, self-sustaining life support, radiation shielding, food production in sealed environments. They called it a city of the future. But the future they envisioned was not on Earth, it was on the moon. And later, maybe Mars. That was the Hermes project, Mars shot. They were preparing to abandon Earth long before the bombs fell. I need you to understand the timeline. By 2073, Boulder Dome was operational. The Hermes 13 rocket was under construction at Bloomfield Space Center, destination Mars. Launch date set for summer 2078, but funding got cut in 2076, diverted to Vault technology. The official story claims the Enclave seized Bloomfield, trying to convert Hermes 13 for planetary evacuation. That they wanted to take the wealthy elite off-world. That is partially true. But what they do not mention is that Hermes 13 was not the first evacuation attempt. It was the last resort, because by 76, the primary evacuation site was already established on the moon, Colony Serenity. That name appears in 18 different terminals across 5 locations, always in fragments, always encrypted. I pieced it together over months. Colony Serenity was the main lunar installation, built between 2020 and 2050. Population estimates vary, but the most reliable figure I found was 217 personnel, scientists, engineers, military, corporate representatives, their families. They called them colonists, but the security protocols read more like a prison manifest. Everyone up there had specialized skills. Everyone had been psychologically vetted. Everyone had signed agreements that they would never return to Earth. Never return. That phrase kept appearing. Not cannot return, never return. As if return was possible, but forbidden. Think about what that means. They sent people to the moon knowing they would die there, knowing their children would be born there, knowing that Earth had become expendable. And then the signal stopped. 2052 is when public missions ended, but private logs continue until October 23rd, 2077, the day the bombs fell. The last transmission I found was logged at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 minutes after Washington, D.C. got hit. It was a short message from someone identified as Director Kuznetsov at Lunar Station 13. 6 words: Earth is lost. Activate Protocol Vanguard. Protocol Vanguard. I have been searching for months, and I cannot find a single file that explains what that means. But whatever it was, it involved cutting all communication with Earth. Every USSA monitoring station shows the same thing. Lunar transmissions ceased at 9:47 a.m. Not because the equipment failed, not because the colony was destroyed. The signals just stopped being sent, deliberately, like someone flipped a switch. Now here is what keeps me awake. Here is what makes my skin crawl. Those orbital weapon platforms, the ones that the Brotherhood and the Enclave have been fighting over, they are still operational. Bradley-Hercules, launched before the war, still in orbit, still functional. The Enclave used it to destroy Liberty Prime, fired 4 salvos, 36 nuclear warheads, from space, after 200 years, and it worked. The Kovac Muldoon platform above Appalachia, still operational, controlled by Modus. Archimedes 2 over Helios, 1 in the Mojave. Poseidon Energy's orbital laser, also functional, still fires on command. How? How does technology survive 2 centuries in the vacuum of space without maintenance? Unless someone has been maintaining it, unless someone up there is watching, still waiting, still operational. I found something else. Crashed satellites, multiple locations, the one at Mojave Drive-In, the one in Appalachia. But here is the thing. When you examine the crash sites, the dates do not match. These satellites did not fall during the Great War. They came down recently, within the last century, within the last few decades. Some of them have burn marks consistent with atmospheric re-entry, but others show evidence of deliberate deorbiting, like someone pushed them out of the sky, like someone was cleaning house. And the supply drops, you have seen them. Strange crates that fall from the sky in the middle of nowhere, advanced technology that should not exist, weapons that are too sophisticated, medicine that should have degraded centuries ago. The Brotherhood assumes they are pre-war stockpiles with delayed deployment timers, but I checked the drop patterns. They are not random. They correlate with major surface events. After Lions activated Project Purity, after the Courier dealt with the Mojave, after the Institute fell, someone is watching, someone is intervening. The Virgo 2 lander in the Museum of Technology has a plague. The very last manned flight to the surface in 2052. Very last manned flight. Not the last manned mission, the last flight to the surface, because flights to the colony continued. They just stopped coming back down. There was a man named Colonel Hartigan, United States Air Force, astronaut. In the 1960s, he was returning from a low-orbit mission in his capsule Clarabella 7. He never made it back. Government claimed weather balloons, cover up. Truth is, something took him, pulled him right out of the sky. I know this because I found his recording on a crashed alien craft. He is talking to something, trying to make first contact, then screaming. He ended up on Mothership Zeta, preserved in cryostasis, dead when they thawed him out. But here is what nobody talks about. Why were the aliens so interested in astronauts? Because Hartigan was not the only one. Multiple abduction reports from USSA personnel, scientists working on lunar projects, engineers who designed spacecraft, all taken, all studied, all eventually found on that mothership. What were the Zetans looking for? What did they want to learn about human space capability? I have a theory. It is going to sound insane, but hear me out. What if the Zetans were not aliens? What if they were us? What if 200 years of isolation on the moon, exposed to cosmic radiation, subjected to experimental FEV, resulted in something that looked alien but started human? The technology on Mothership Zeta is similar to pre-war designs. Too similar. The ship uses fusion cores. The weapons look like modified human energy weapons. The architecture, when you really examine it, has industrial design elements consistent with 21st century American engineering. What do you think really happened here? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would like to know if I am the only one who feels this way. The Boulder Dome scientists were working on terraforming, creating breathable atmospheres in sealed environments, adapting human biology for low-gravity survival. The terminals mentioned genetic modification experiments, accelerated evolution protocols. They were trying to create humans that could thrive on the moon, humans that would not need Earth. What happens to those experiments over 2 centuries? What emerges? The Sea of Tranquility. That name appears in Fallout 76. American forces fought there, on the moon, to secure the nation's freedom. During what war? Against whom? China had a space program too. Less documented, more secretive, but the evidence is there. Chinese stealth suits include spacewalk modifications. Why would ground troops need vacuum-rated armor? Unless they expected to fight in space. Or on the moon, I found one reference to Tiangong Fortress, Chinese military documents, heavily corrupted file, but the phrase is clear: Tiangong Fortress will be the shield that protects the homeland, not on the homeland, not in the homeland, that protects the homeland, from orbit, from the moon, from somewhere above. China built their own colony, their own installations, parallel to American efforts. Both sides racing to militarize the lunar surface, both sides establishing permanent presence, and then the bombs fell, and everyone on Earth died or mutated. But the colonies, they watched it happen. They saw the flash of nuclear fire. They tracked the fallout spreading across continents. They monitored the collapse of civilization, and they made a choice. They sealed themselves off, activated Protocol Vanguard, cut all ties, decided that Earth was contaminated, quarantined, lost. That was 206 years ago, enough time for 8 or 9 generations to be born. People who have never set foot on Earth, people who only know the lunar colonies as home. What would they think of us? Of the surface dwellers? The rad-scarred remnants of a species that destroyed its own planet? Would they see us as human? Or would they see us as something less? Something contaminated? Something to be studied? To be managed? To be controlled from a safe distance? The technology is there. The Delta IX rockets were reusable. The research logs from Repcon Aerospace describe isotope 239 igniting agent as having long-term stability, rocket fuel that lasts centuries, spacecraft that could make the return journey. They have the means, they have the ships. They could come back anytime they wanted, so why have they not? Why the silence? Why the isolation? Unless they are already here. That thought is what started me down this path. What if the silence was not abandonment? What if it was observation? Think about the strange encounters in the wasteland, the people who appear with no history, the traders with technology they should not have, the mysterious benefactors who help certain factions without explanation. What if some of them are not wastelanders at all? What if they are colonists who made the descent, who walk among us, who study us like specimens in a terrarium? I started cross-referencing, looking for patterns, anomalies, people who do not fit, and I found them. Scattered reports across multiple settlements. A merchant in the hub who sold pre-war medicine that was not degraded. When questioned about the source, he vanished overnight. A doctor in Rivet City with surgical techniques too advanced for wasteland training, gone after 6 months. A Brotherhood scribe who solved technical problems that stumped Elder Lyons himself, transferred out suddenly with no forwarding orders. None of them left tracks. None of them had verifiable histories before they appeared, and all of them shared common traits. Pale skin like they had never seen sunlight, unusually tall and thin builds, difficulty adjusting to Earth gravity in their first weeks. One report describes a woman in Megaton who would stumble when she walked, like her body expected less resistance, like she was used to 1/6 gravity, like she was born on the moon. The Brotherhood found something in 2270, a crashed recon vehicle near Adams Air Force Base. Not alien, not pre-war American, something in between. The hull composition matched no known alloy from before the war, but the reactor inside was a modified version of a Poseidon energy fusion core. The navigational computer used Robco software architecture, hybrid technology. Human-based design evolved beyond what Earth achieved, developed somewhere else, somewhere with resources and time and safety, somewhere like a lunar colony. Elder Lyons classified the report, buried it deep, but I found the terminal where the research team logged their findings. One scientist named Rothschild noted that the vessel showed signs of atmospheric entry but also extended deep space transit, like it had traveled from very far away and then descended. His final note reads, "This craft was not built to explore, it was built to infiltrate. Infiltrate, not explore, not scout, infiltrate." That word choice tells you everything. Someone is conducting covert operations on Earth, someone with advanced technology, someone who does not want to be discovered, someone watching from above and occasionally touching down to interfere. The supply drops I mentioned earlier, I tracked them. 63 documented drops over the last 30 years. Every single one occurred within 2 weeks of a major political shift. The NCR's expansion into the Mojave was preceded by a supply drop containing advanced agricultural equipment. The Brotherhood Enclave War escalated after mysterious weapons caches appeared near both front lines. The Institute's synth program accelerated after someone delivered holotapes containing pre-war AI research that even the Institute did not have. Someone is playing chess, moving pieces, pushing factions towards specific outcomes. Why? What is the endgame? I have a theory, and it terrifies me. What if the lunar colonists are preparing Earth for reconquest? What if they are softening the ground, ensuring that when they finally reveal themselves, there is a power structure in place they can control? A civilization rebuilt to their specifications? The Enclave believed they were the rightful inheritors of America, the pure humans who would reclaim the wasteland from mutants and savages. But what if they were not the only ones with that belief? What if there is another group? A group that actually is genetically pure, that never suffered radiation exposure, that maintained pre-war technology without degradation, that considers themselves the true heirs of humanity? Colony Serenity was not the only installation. I found references to at least 4 others. Colony Serenity at the Sea of Tranquility, Lunar, Station 13 at an undisclosed location, Armstrong Base near the lunar South Pole, Aldrin Facility in orbit, 2 surface colonies, 1 station, 1 orbital platform. Combined population estimates range from 400 to 800 personnel at the time of the Great War. 200 years of reproduction at even conservative rates would yield 10 to 15,000 people by now. 10,000 humans who never knew Earth, who think of the moon as home, who view the surface as foreign territory, and they would have resources we can only dream of. The moon has water ice at the poles. They have fusion power. They have enclosed biomes for food production. They have access to raw materials from asteroid mining. The terminals at Boulder Dome describe helium-3 extraction from lunar regolith, fuel for fusion reactors that burns cleaner and more efficiently than anything Earth ever achieved. An entire industrial economy built in isolation, 2 centuries of uninterrupted technological development. We are still using 200-year-old laser rifles. They could have progressed to weapons we cannot even imagine. We struggle with basic agriculture. They have perfected hydroponics and genetic modification. We die from radiation at 50. They probably live past 100 in pristine conditions. The technological gap would be immense, insurmountable. If they decided to return and claim Earth, what could we do to stop them? The orbital weapon platforms are insurance. Bradley-Hercules, Kovac Muldoon, Archimedes II, they are still functional because someone maintains them. Lunar colonists could reach those satellites, could repair them, could keep them operational as tools of control. The Enclave thought they controlled Bradley-Hercules. But who gave the Enclave the access codes? How did they know the satellite still worked? Someone fed them that information. Someone wanted them to use it, to test it, to prove that orbital strikes remain viable. I found the maintenance logs. Bradley-Hercules should have failed decades ago. The Kovac Muldoon platform had critical design flaws that limited its operational life. But both keep working. Both respond to commands. Both fire on target. The only explanation is external maintenance. Repair missions from beyond Earth. From the one place with the capability and motivation to keep those weapons active. The Mars missions never launched. Hermes 13 and Hermes 14 sat on the pad at Bloomfield Space Center until the bombs fell. But the Mars Shot Project terminals describe something interesting. Plans for a 3-stage colonization effort. Stage 1 was the moon. Stage 2 was Mars. Stage 3 was the outer system. They were thinking long-term, multiplanetary, building a spacefaring civilization that would outlive Earth. Stage 1 succeeded. We know the lunar colonies existed, but what about Stage 2? What if some of those missions launched from the moon instead of Earth? What if the colonists used their industrial base to construct new ships, to send expeditions to Mars, to establish a second foothold? The technology was there, the resources were available, and they had 200 years to do it. We could be dealing with not just a lunar civilization, but an interplanetary network, watching, waiting, planning. Repcon Aerospace was working on advanced propulsion systems. The rockets at their test site used isotope 239 igniting agent, highly radioactive, highly efficient. The technical specifications describe thrust capabilities far exceeding what Earth-to-Moon transit required. These were deep space engines, built for voyages measured in months or years, built for Mars, built for beyond. And then there is the Bright Brotherhood, a group of ghouls who launched Repcon rockets into space. They called it Salvation, a journey to the great beyond. Everyone assumed they died in the void. But what if they did not? What if someone was waiting for them? What if the lunar colonists tracked those launches and decided to investigate, to make contact, to bring in the first surface dwellers who reached for the stars? The radio signals. That is another piece of the puzzle. Multiple locations report strange transmissions from space, not the usual pre-war broadcasts that loop endlessly. New signals, complex data bursts, encrypted. The Brotherhood has been trying to decode them for years. No success, because the encryption is not pre-war American. It is something else, something developed in isolation, a lunar cipher that Earth never knew. I managed to capture one of these transmissions, recorded it from an old USSA monitoring array, ran it through every decryption algorithm I could find. Nothing worked, but I noticed something. The signal repeats every 14.7 days. That is half a lunar month. The signal originates from a fixed point relative to Earth's rotation, geosynchronous orbit. There is a satellite up there, broadcasting, sending information to someone. To whom, to what, to where? The Vault-Tec experiments. We all know they were testing human adaptability under extreme conditions, but nobody asks why. For what purpose? What was the endgame? The official explanation is that the Enclave wanted data for recolonizing Earth or escaping to another world. But Vault-Tec was not controlled by the Enclave. Vault-Tec was a corporate entity with its own agenda, an agenda that included stellar dynamics, their space subsidiary. What if the Vault experiments were not about Earth at all? What if they were providing data to the lunar colonists, testing how humans adapt to sealed environments, gathering information for expanding the moon bases? Think about it. Every Vault experiment parallels a challenge of lunar colonization. Vault 13 tested water scarcity. Lunar colonies need water recycling. Vault 68 had 999 men and 1 woman, genetic bottleneck scenarios. Lunar populations are small and need reproduction strategies. Vault 111 tested cryogenic suspension, exactly what Boulder Dome was developing for long-term space travel. The vaults were not about saving humanity. They were about gathering data for the colonies. Barb Howard, Vault-Tec executive. She pitched the Vault program to Robco, West-Tec, Repcon, and Big MT. She wanted each corporation to claim vaults and run experiments, to create perfect conditions for humanity through competition. But perfect conditions for what? For whom? She talked about wiping the slate clean, starting over, creating a designed society. That is not the language of survival. That is the language of colonization. And she succeeded. The corporations built their vaults, ran their experiments, collected 200 years of data that sat in terminals across the wasteland, data that was easy to access if you knew where to look, data that could be transmitted, uploaded, sent to orbit, fed to whoever was watching from above. The Institute synthesized humans. The think tank put brains in jars. The Big MT developed transplantation technology. West-Tec created FEV. All of these experiments pushed the boundaries of human modification. All of them explored what humanity could become, and all of that information is available, recorded, ready to be harvested by anyone with the technology to access it. What would lunar colonists do with that data? How would they use it? Would they improve themselves? Modify their genetics? Create super soldiers like Vault-Tec envisioned? The isolation of space combined with advanced biotech could produce something extraordinary or something monstrous. 200 years is enough time for intentional evolution, for designer genetics, for post-human development. If you have ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments. I will be reading them. The Sea of Tranquility battle. Fallout 76 references American forces fighting there during the Resource Wars, before the Great War. That timeline matches the final lunar missions. The official story claims resource conflicts were limited to Earth, Alaska, and annexed territories. But what if the real war extended beyond? What if America and China fought over the moon, over lunar helium-3 deposits, over strategic positions, over the ultimate high ground? China launched satellites, built space stations, developed their own deep space program. The real-world Tiangong program had military applications. In the Fallout timeline, they would have pushed harder, militarized faster, competed more aggressively, and they had the advantage. Chinese stealth technology, infiltration doctrine. They could have established lunar positions without America knowing, could have built hidden bases on the far side, could have prepared for a war that would be fought in vacuum. The Great War might have had three fronts: the ground war in Alaska and China, the nuclear exchange that destroyed both homelands, and the space war that nobody talks about, the final battle for control of lunar resources, a battle that determined who would inherit the moon, who would survive, who would watch from above as Earth burned below. American victory at the Sea of Tranquility would explain Colony Serenity. If America won the Lunar War, they controlled the major installations. Chinese forces would have been eliminated or driven off. But defeated does not mean destroyed. What if Chinese survivors retreated to hidden bases? What if they waited? What if there are two lunar civilizations? American and Chinese? Both isolated? Both watching Earth? Both planning their return? That would explain the technological anomalies. Two different design philosophies, American fusion cores and Robco software appearing alongside Chinese stealth systems and rare earth composites. Two separate groups making contact with Earth. Two separate agendas, maybe even competing agendas, using surface factions as proxies, maneuvering for advantage, preparing for the real war, the war for who rebuilds Earth. The Brotherhood's mission is to preserve technology, keep it from being misused, noble goal. But consider where advanced technology keeps appearing, how the Brotherhood keeps finding caches of pre-war weapons, how they stumble onto facilities with functioning equipment. Someone is guiding them, leading them, shaping them into a military force with high-tech capability, creating an army that could be useful, that could be claimed, that could be turned to new purpose. The NCR grows stronger every year, expands territory, establishes government, restores order. Who benefits from that? Who wants a functional nation-state on Earth? Someone who plans to make contact, someone who needs infrastructure in place, someone who wants a civilization ready to be integrated or conquered or replaced. The Institute represented the pinnacle of surface science, synthetic humans, teleportation, nuclear power, advanced robotics, everything the moon colonies would have developed further. Were they in contact? Did the Institute receive guidance? Is that how they achieved such rapid advancement? The terminals mention outside transmissions, signals from unknown sources, technical specifications that appeared with no research history. Someone was helping them, teaching them, preparing them for something. And then the Institute fell, destroyed by the sole survivor, or by the Brotherhood, or by the Railroad, depending on your path, but destroyed nonetheless. The most advanced faction on Earth, eliminated, convenient, almost like someone decided they had grown too powerful, too independent, too capable of resisting, too dangerous to the plan. Every faction that gets too strong faces destruction. The Enclave on the East Coast, wiped out. The Institute, eliminated. Caesar's Legion if the Courier opposes them, crushed. The Brotherhood at Helios 1, defeated by the NCR. Maximum pressure applied at critical moments, keeping everyone balanced, keeping everyone weak enough, making sure no single group dominates, making sure Earth stays manageable, controllable. Ready for Phase 2. Phase 2. That term appears exactly once in the files I recovered. A Vault-Tec internal memo dated October 15th, 2077, 8 days before the bombs fell. The subject line reads, Phase 2, Timeline Acceleration. The body of the message is heavily corrupted, but 3 sentences survived intact. Lunar assets confirm readiness for extended observation period. Surface sterilization will proceed as planned. Phase 2, Implementation awaits target civilization threshold. Target civilization threshold. They were waiting for something, some specific condition, some level of development. They wanted Earth bombed, wanted the population reduced, wanted civilization collapsed, so they could rebuild it according to their design. The vaults were not shelters. They were seed banks. Human seed banks. Genetic diversity preserved in controlled conditions, ready to be cultivated when the time came. And the time is coming. I can feel it. The signs are everywhere, once you know what to look for. The weather has been changing, not the usual radiation storms. Something else. Patterns in the cloud formations, geometric shapes too precise to be natural. I watched the sky for 3 nights from this monitoring station. At exactly 0200 hours each night, a grid pattern appears in the upper atmosphere. 64 squares, 8 by 8, like a targeting matrix, like someone is mapping the surface, dividing it into zones, preparing for coordinated action. The Prydwen flew for the first time in decades. The Brotherhood's airship, a marvel of pre-war engineering, restored to function. But I found the original designs. The Prydwen should not have been repairable. Critical components were missing. Fusion reactor specifications that no longer existed. Stabilization systems that required materials nobody had. Yet somehow, the Brotherhood found everything they needed. Somehow, the parts were exactly where they looked. Somehow, it all fit together. Because someone provided them. Someone made sure the Brotherhood would have air superiority, would have mobile command capability, would have a platform visible from orbit. Why would lunar colonists want that? Unless they need a beacon, a rendezvous point, a location they can target from above when Phase 2 begins. I started mapping the major factions, drawing connections, looking for patterns in their territories, and I found something that made my blood run cold. The major settlements form a perfect spiral. The Hub, Shady Sands, New Vegas, Rivet City, Diamond City. When you plot them on a pre-war map and account for drift, they create a logarithmic spiral with its center point in Wyoming, right above Cheyenne Mountain, right above NORAD, right above the location where the most critical pre-war military satellites were controlled. That is not coincidence. That is intelligent design. Someone influenced where people settled, where trade routes developed, where civilization regrew, shaping the surface into a specific pattern. For what purpose? The spiral is a navigation aid, a marker visible from space, the kind of thing you would use to orient a landing pattern, to designate approach vectors, to mark the drop zone. The drop zone for what? For whom? For how many? I found a personnel manifest, buried in the Enclave files at Adams Air Force Base. It lists lunar colony staff assignments as of October 22nd, 2077, 217 names. But someone added a handwritten note in the margin. Generation 8, graduation 1412. Generation 8, born on the moon, trained on the moon, raised to view Earth as foreign territory, nearly 1,500 of them, and that was just one generation. If you account for overlapping generations, staggered breeding programs, genetic optimization protocols, the current population could be 5,000. 10,000, 20,000, an army. That is what they built. An army that never knew Earth, that feels no connection to surface dwellers, that views us as contaminated, as failed, as obstacles to reclamation. We are the natives. They are the colonizers returning home. and they have every advantage. The satellite network is just the beginning. I accessed the command protocols for Bradley-Hercules. The interface shows 8 launch platforms. 8, but only 1 has been activated from Earth. The other 7 respond to external commands, off-world commands, lunar commands. Someone up there has 7 nuclear platforms on standby, 72 warheads aimed at whatever targets they choose, and we cannot stop them, cannot even detect when they fire until the missiles are already falling. Archimedes. 2 is worse. It is not a weapon, it is a proof of concept. Poseidon Energy designed it as a prototype for a network of orbital lasers. The full project called for 36 satellites, global coverage, precision strikes anywhere on Earth, with 30-second response time. Construction was interrupted by the war. Only 1 satellite was completed, but the manufacturing facilities were on the moon. Boulder Dome specifically mentions satellite assembly in lunar orbit. Zero gravity makes construction easier. Solar power is unlimited. If the colonists completed the network, they could burn any target on Earth without warning, without launching from the surface, without giving us any chance to respond. We would not be fighting an invasion. We would be accepting an occupation. Submit or be destroyed from above. Those are the only options against orbital superiority. But there is something else, something that changes everything. Something I almost missed because it was hidden in plain sight. The Zetans. Everyone assumes they are aliens from another star system, little gray creatures in flying saucers, abducting humans for mysterious experiments. That is the story. That is what we believe. But look closer at the evidence. Look at what they actually do. They collect human specimens. They study our biology. They preserve us in cryostasis. They have been doing this for centuries, since the Edo period in Japan, since the Old West, since the Space Age. Continuously, systematically, building a database of human genetics across time periods. Why? Because they are tracking human evolution, documenting how radiation exposure changes us, cataloging mutations, studying how surface conditions affect biology. They are not alien researchers. They are human researchers, studying their own species, studying what they left behind, studying what we became. The technology on Mothership Zeta is human, modified, advanced, but fundamentally human. Fusion cores, energy weapons, architectural design elements. Even the aliens themselves, when you examine them closely, have skeletal structures similar to humans. Elongated, adapted for low gravity, pale skin from lack of sunlight, large eyes for low-light environments. These are not evolutionary traits from another planet. These are adaptations to life in space, to life on the moon, to generations lived in artificial habitats. The Zetans are us. 200 years diverged, 200 years modified, 200 years changed by intentional genetic engineering and environmental pressure. They are what the lunar colonists became, and they have been watching Earth the entire time, not as outsiders, as scientists studying a control group, an unmodified population left to develop naturally in hostile conditions. We are the experiment. They are the observers. And now the observation period is ending. Phase 2 begins. The colonists will reveal themselves, will make contact, will offer to save us from ourselves, and we will have no choice but to accept, because they control the weapons, they control the sky, they control everything that matters, unless we act first. That is why I am recording this. That is why I am transmitting everything I found. Someone needs to know. Someone needs to prepare. Someone needs to organize resistance before it is too late. The Institute had the right idea. Synthetic humans, beings designed for specific purposes. If the colonists created modified humans, we need to do the same. We need to level the field. The think tank understood. Brains separated from bodies, consciousness preserved in machines, immortality through technology. That is what we need to survive against post-human opponents. The Brotherhood hoards technology. That impulse is correct even if their reasoning is flawed. We need every weapon, every robot, every suit of power armor, every energy cell, everything that can fight, everything that can resist, because when the lunar forces descend, we will need overwhelming firepower just to survive the first wave. The NCR is building a nation. That infrastructure will be essential. Coordinated defense requires communication networks, supply lines, central command, all the things the NCR provides. They need to be warned. They need to prepare. They need to militarize faster than they planned. But here is the problem. Here is why I am so afraid. I think some of them already know. I think some surface leaders are already compromised, already working with the colonists, already preparing to collaborate, traitors who will betray humanity for promised positions in the new order. The Enclave preached purity, genetic superiority, the right to rule. That rhetoric matches lunar colonial ideology perfectly. What if the Enclave was not independent? What if they were in contact with the moon? What if they were the advance team? The collaborators preparing Earth for integration? That would explain their technology, their resources, their knowledge of pre-war systems that should have been lost. President Richardson talked about reclaiming America, purging mutants, restoring the old world. But his plan required infrastructure the Enclave did not have. The oil rig was impressive, but insufficient. They needed support. They needed guidance. They needed someone feeding them information, someone from above. The Enclave fell. Both coasts defeated, their leadership dead, their bases destroyed. But that might have been intentional. A controlled demolition. Remove the obviously compromised faction so suspicion does not spread. Let surface dwellers think they won. Keep them ignorant while the real operators remain hidden. The Enclave was a sacrifice, a pawn traded to protect the king, and the king is still playing. I found a name in the deepest files, someone called the Architect. No first name, no identification number, just the title. The Architect appears in Vault-Tec documents, in USSA logs, in Enclave communications, in Institute research notes, always the same designation, always offering guidance, always pushing specific agendas. Nobody has seen the Architect, nobody knows who they are, but everyone follows their advice because the advice always works, always achieves results, always moves pieces exactly where they need to be. The Architect is real, I am certain, and I think the Architect is directing Phase 2 from orbit, coordinating multiple factions, playing them against each other, ensuring the right outcome, ensuring Earth is ready, ensuring we are weak enough, desperate enough, grateful enough to accept salvation when it arrives. The question is not if the colonists will return. The question is when, and what we do when they arrive. Do we resist? Do we submit? Do we fight a war we cannot win? Or do we accept the inevitable and try to survive as second-class citizens in our own world? I do not have answers. I only have questions and fears and data that points to something vast, something planned, something unstoppable. The moon is not empty. It never was. And soon, everyone will know they are coming. The Watchers, the Inheritors, the post-humans who claim Earth as their birthright. They have been preparing for 2 centuries, and we have been blind. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the wasteland, hit that subscribe button. It tells me someone out there is still paying attention to warnings like these. I am going to continue transmitting, continue investigating, continue recording everything I find. Because when they come, we need to know what we are facing. We need to understand the enemy. We need every piece of information that might give us an edge. The sky is not empty. Look up on clear nights. Watch for movement against the stars, patterns that should not exist, lights that do not belong. They are there. They are watching. They have always been watching, and soon they will descend. I need to tell you what happened 3 days ago, why I am rushing this recording, why I am transmitting on every frequency I can access, why this might be my last message. I saw them, not from a distance, not on a terminal screen. I saw them in person, 2 of them, standing at the edge of this facility at dawn, just watching, just waiting. They wore suits I have never seen before, seamless material that shifted colors with the light, Environmental suits, but elegant. Advanced. The helmets were transparent, but somehow reflective. I could see faces inside. Human faces, but wrong. Elongated skulls. Eyes slightly too large. Skin that looked pale even through the tinted material. They stood differently. Posture adapted to lower gravity. They had to consciously adjust their stance to accommodate Earth's pull. I hid, watched them through the monitoring station's exterior cameras. They did not approach the building, did not try to enter. They just stood there for 17 minutes. One of them held a device, scanning, reading, collecting data. The other faced the horizon, perfectly still, like a statue, like something waiting. Then they left, not walked away, not climbed into a vehicle. They just activated something on their suits and rose straight up. Vertical ascent, no visible propulsion, no sound, just smooth upward movement until they disappeared into the pre-dawn sky. Impossible, except I watched it happen, recorded it. The footage is transmitting with this message. That was when I knew everything I theorized, everything I pieced together from fragments and corrupted files. It is all true. They are here. They are moving openly. They are preparing for something immediate. I went back through the security footage from the past week, found 4 more incidents, different locations within visual range, always 2 figures, always the same behavior, scanning, observing, recording. They are mapping this area, cataloging, assessing. Why here? Why this monitoring station? Then I understood. This facility has direct line of sight to 7 major settlements. The equipment here can broadcast to half the wasteland. If you wanted to coordinate simultaneous communication with multiple population centers, this is where you would do it. This is the ideal location for announcement, a revelation, a first contact. They know I am here. They know I have been using their equipment, and they do not care. That terrifies me more than anything. They are not worried about what I discovered. They are not concerned about me spreading information, because it does not matter anymore. The time for secrecy has passed. Phase 2 is beginning whether we are ready or not. I found the reply schedule hidden in the astronomical data logs, a convergence point. 3 weeks from today, November 25th, the moon will be at perigee, closest approach to Earth. Optimal descent trajectory, minimal fuel expenditure, maximum payload capacity. That is when the ships will come. That is when the colony fleets launch. That is when 200 years of isolation ends and the lunar forces return home. 3 weeks, 21 days. And I estimate we have maybe 12,000 people across all major factions who could mount organized resistance. 12,000 surface dwellers with salvaged weapons and 200-year-old technology against however many colonists exist with advanced spacecraft and orbital weapons, platforms and genetic modifications, and 2 centuries of uninterrupted development. We cannot win. That is the brutal truth. We cannot win a war against orbital superiority. Every strategic asset we have can be destroyed from space. Every gathering point can be targeted. Every command center can be burned. They control the high ground, and we have no way to reach them. But maybe winning is not the goal. Maybe survival is enough. I have been thinking about the Zetans, about why they abduct humans, why they study us, why they preserve genetic samples. If the lunar colonists are tracking our mutations, our adaptations to radiation, our evolution under hostile conditions, that means they see value in what we became. We develop something they lack, something important, something worth studying: resistance to radiation, natural adaptation to high contamination environments, biological diversity created by 2 centuries of uncontrolled mutation. We are not pure humans anymore. We are post-apocalyptic humans, evolved for this world, adapted to survive here, and they cannot replicate that, cannot simulate it, cannot create it in controlled lunar habitats. They need us, not as equals, not as partners, but as genetic resources, as living libraries of adaptation, as breeding stock for traits they lost in sterile environments. That is why they watch, why they preserve, why they have not simply exterminated us from orbit. We have leverage. We just need to understand how to use it. The Institute was close to figuring this out. Their synthetic human program was revolutionary, but they made one critical mistake. They tried to create perfect humans, unmarked by radiation, free from mutation, pure baseline genetics. Exactly what the lunar colonists already have. Exactly what is not valuable. The next step, the step the Institute never took, is embracing mutation, weaponizing it, using our adaptations as advantages. Super mutants are stronger and tougher than baseline humans. Ghouls are functionally immortal and immune to radiation. Synths can be programmed with any knowledge. If you combine those traits intentionally, if you created designed post-humans that incorporated beneficial mutations while maintaining intelligence and coordination, you would have something formidable, something even orbital weapons cannot easily destroy. That is what we need. A biological answer to technological superiority, adaptation as warfare, evolution as resistance, becomes something they did not plan for, something their models did not predict, something that can survive what they throw at us and keep fighting. The think tank had the technology, biological research stations, genetic modification labs, brain preservation techniques. The Institute had the manufacturing, synthetic construction, mass production capabilities. Vault-Tec had the FEV, controlled mutation protocols, targeted enhancement serums. The Brotherhood has the organization, command structure, logistical networks. The NCR has the population, thousands of potential subjects, the raw material. Put it all together and you have a chance, a desperate, terrible chance that requires sacrificing our humanity to save our species, becoming monsters to fight gods. But maybe that is what survival demands. Maybe that is the price. I am transmitting coordinates with this message, locations where the relevant technology exists, where the research can be completed, where the synthesis can happen. Someone needs to pick up this work. Someone needs to complete what I started, because I will not be here to finish it. They are coming back. I can feel it. The two figures I saw, they are returning. The scanning device they used, I think it detected my transmissions, tagged my location, marked me for collection. They want to know what I know, want to understand how much I discovered, want to take me somewhere for study. I am not going with them. I have seen what happens to abductees. I have read the reports from Mothership Zeta, the experiments, the dissections, the preservation in cryopods. I would rather die here, rather destroy this facility and everything in it than let them take me alive. But first I need to finish transmitting, need to upload everything to every frequency, need to make sure someone receives this. The pre-war world was built on lies. Vault-Tec lied about saving people. The government lied about protecting citizens. The corporations lied about everything. And the biggest lie was that the space program ended, that humanity gave up on the stars, that we turned inward and died. The truth is that one branch of humanity kept reaching, kept building, kept advancing. While we suffered and mutated and barely survived, they thrived. And now they return to claim what they believe is theirs. But Earth is not theirs anymore. It belongs to us, the survivors, the adapters, the ones who endured hell and emerged transformed. We are not the humanity they left behind. We are something new, something forged in radiation and violence and desperate struggle. And we will not surrender our world without a fight. Even if that fight seems hopeless, even if the odds are impossible, even if resistance means extinction, because submission means slavery, means becoming genetic cattle for post-human colonizers, means watching our children bred for traits, means losing everything that makes us who we are. I choose resistance. I choose defiance. I choose to die free rather than live as property. And I hope whoever hears this makes the same choice, because November 25th is coming, 3 weeks, and when those ships descend, when the lunar forces land, when the architect reveals themselves and demands surrender, we need to be ready to answer with fire. The Brotherhood needs to mobilize every chapter, every night, every weapon. The NCR needs to arm its civilians, mass conscription, total war footing. The Minutemen need to activate every settlement, turn the Commonwealth into a fortress. Caesar's Legion needs to redirect from civil war to external threat. The followers need to accelerate medical research, radiation treatments, mutation enhancement protocols. The railroad needs to repurpose synths, combat models, infiltration units, sabotage specialists. Everyone needs to prepare. Because this is not a wasteland skirmish. This is not a faction dispute. This is an existential war for the future of humanity, for who gets to define what humanity means, for whether we survive as independent beings or become subjects of a lunar empire. The evidence is undeniable. The lunar colonies exist. The Watchers are real. The plan is in motion. Phase 2 begins in 3 weeks. I do not know exactly what form it will take. Full invasion, diplomatic contact, targeted strikes, selective occupation, but something is coming, something that changes everything. I wish I had more time, more data, more proof, but they are here now. I can see movement outside. 3 figures this time. They are not hiding, not waiting. They are approaching the entrance. I have maybe minutes before they breach. I am setting the reactor to overload. 30-minute countdown. This facility and everything in it will be vapor. They will not get my research, will not capture me, will not use this location for their broadcast. One small act of defiance, one tiny victory, but maybe it buys time, maybe it delays their schedule, maybe it matters. To whoever receives this transmission, to whoever pieces together what I discovered, the truth is out there, literally above you, looking down, waiting, planning. They have every advantage except one. They do not understand what we became. They still think of us as baseline humans, weak, fragmented, easy to control. They are wrong. We are survivors of the apocalypse. We are the species that looked at nuclear annihilation and refused to die. We are harder than they know, meaner than they expect, more resilient than their models predict. Use that. Weaponize our adaptations. Embrace our mutations, turn our weaknesses into strengths, fight them in ways they cannot anticipate, bleed them, harass them, make them regret returning, make occupation so costly that they reconsider, make Earth undesirable enough that they retreat to their sterile colonies and leave us alone. It is possible, difficult, unlikely, but possible, and possibility is all we need. A chance, a slim hope, a narrow path to survival. That is more than our ancestors had when the bombs fell. They faced certain death, and still some survived. We face overwhelming force and can still resist. The door is buckling. They are using some kind of cutting tool. I can see the metal glowing, hear the hiss of superheated material. They will be through in seconds. I am uploading this final segment now. Emergency broadcast. Every frequency, maximum power. Someone will hear. Someone will understand. Someone will act. November 25th. Remember that date. Watch the sky. When the ships descend, when the colonists land, when Phase 2 begins, do not surrender. Do not collaborate. Do not believe their promises of peace and prosperity. They see us as resources, as specimens, as lesser beings. Prove them wrong. Show them what wasteland humanity has become. Show them the price of trying to reclaim Earth. We are the inheritors now. We survived the apocalypse. We earned this world. It belongs to us, and we will defend it. They are through the door. I can hear their footsteps. Strange rhythm, low gravity gait. They are calling out. Not in English. Not in any language I recognize. Possibly their own dialect, evolved from American English but changed by isolation, made foreign, made other. I am not afraid. I made my choice. I chose to know, to discover, to reveal, and I chose to resist. Now I choose to deny them this facility, this information, this victory. The reactor is at critical. 15 seconds. The building is shaking. They realize what I did. They are retreating, running, even with their advanced suits. They cannot survive a fusion detonation at close range. Small comfort, small victory. But mine, to anyone listening, anyone who survived, anyone who fights, Remember the lunar colonies. Remember the Watchers. Remember that we are not alone. Remember that the sky is not empty. Remember that Phase 2 is coming. And remember that we have the right to exist, the right to survive, the right to determine our own future, no matter what descends from above, no matter what forces array against us, no matter what the cost. We are wasteland humanity. We are the survivors. We are the future. They cannot take that from us. 10 seconds. Fight well, die free, and never surrender Earth. This is my last transmission, my final warning, my testament. The moon is not empty. They are coming. Be ready. 5 seconds. For humanity. For Earth.